The $4,000 Valentino heel connected with Maya's stomach before she could even process what was happening. She hit the marble floor of Tokyo's Roppongi Hills shopping complex hard, her hands instinctively wrapping around her abdomen as designer shopping bags scattered around her like fallen leaves. Blood trickled from her split lip. Christmas lights blurred above her. And standing over her, his face twisted with the same contempt she remembered from 2 years ago, was Derek, her ex-fiancé, the man who'd abandoned her pregnant and penniless in Seattle. The man who had no idea that the baby she'd lost back then had a successor, a 3-month-old secret growing inside her right now. And Derek definitely had no idea about the wedding band hidden beneath her leather glove, the penthouse in Shibuya she'd left that morning, or the man whose child she was carrying, Takeshi Yamamoto, her husband, Tokyo's most feared underground power broker. As Maya's trembling hand reached for her phone, as Takeshi's name flashed across the screen, she watched the color drain from Derek's face. He'd just kicked the wrong woman. And in approximately 12 minutes, when Takeshi's convoy pulled into this mall's underground garage, Derek Hamilton was going to learn what it meant to touch something that belonged to the Yamamoto family. But right now, in this frozen moment, he still thought she was nobody. He had no idea his world was about to end. Before we witness the reckoning that's about to unfold, I need you to do something for me. Hit that subscribe button right now, because we're covering the most intense real-life dramas you won't believe actually happened, and trust me, you don't want to miss what comes next in Maya's story. Turn on those notifications. Now let's get back to that marble floor in Tokyo. Maya had woken up that morning to Takeshi's hand on her stomach, his touch gentle despite the calluses that told stories of a harder life. They'd been married for 4 months. She'd been pregnant for 3. He didn't know yet. She was waiting for the perfect moment, and this morning, watching him sleep in their bedroom overlooking Tokyo Tower, she'd almost told him. Almost. "You're awake," he'd murmured in Japanese, his eyes still closed. His Japanese had become her favorite language, even though her own was still imperfect, colored by her American accent. "Couldn't sleep," she'd replied, running her fingers through his dark hair. "Too excited about Christmas shopping." He'd opened his eyes then, those dark eyes that had first captured her attention at a business conference in Osaka 18 months ago. "Take Kenji and Hiro with you." "Baby, I'm just going to Roppongi Hills. I'll be fine." His jaw had tightened. Takeshi was protective to an extreme that sometimes felt overwhelming. But she understood why. In his world, vulnerability was death, and she was his only vulnerability.
"Maya." His voice had dropped into that tone that wasn't quite a command, but wasn't quite a request either. "You don't go anywhere in this city without security. Not anymore. You know what I am. You know the enemies that creates." She'd kissed him instead of arguing. "Okay, I'll take them." The tension had left his shoulders. He'd pulled her closer, his hand still resting on her stomach, and she'd wondered what he'd do when he found out, if he'd be happy, terrified, both. "I have meetings until 6, he'd said, "but tonight I'm taking you somewhere special." "Where?" "If I told you, it wouldn't be special." That smile, dangerous and devastating. "Wear the black dress, the one with the back that makes me forget we have dinner reservations." She'd laughed. They'd made love slowly, carefully, though he didn't know why she gasped a little differently now, why certain positions made her breath catch. And then he'd left her in their penthouse, surrounded by luxury she still couldn't quite believe was real, carrying a secret that would change everything. Now, 6 hours later, she was on a mall floor, bleeding, staring up at the man who'd destroyed her life 2 years ago. "Stay down," Derek snarled, his designer suit probably costing more than he'd ever spent on her in 3 years together. "Stay down where trash belongs." Maya's vision swam. The kick had been hard enough to knock the wind from her lungs, but her hand stayed locked around her stomach, protecting, always protecting. "Derek?" Her voice came out broken. "Please?" "Please?" He laughed, and she remembered that laugh, cold, cruel. You followed me to Tokyo? That's pathetic, even for you." She hadn't followed him. She'd met Takeshi at a conference, fallen in love, married him, built a life here. Tokyo was her home now, but Derek didn't know that. Derek was seeing the girl he'd left crying in a Seattle apartment, not the woman she'd become. Kenji was suddenly there, his hand inside his jacket where she knew he kept his gun. Hiro had his phone out, and Maya knew exactly who he was calling. "Ma'am, are you injured?" Kenji asked in Japanese, his eyes never leaving Derek. Derek barely glanced at them. "What, you hired some Japanese bodyguards to make yourself feel important? How much are you paying these guys to pretend you matter?" "Sir, step back," Kenji said in heavily accented English, his voice deadly calm. "Or what?" Derek moved forward aggressively. It happened in seconds. Derek shoved Kenji, trying to get to Maya. In the chaos, his hand connected with her shoulder, hard enough to send her stumbling backward into a display. She cried out, her hand still wrapped around her stomach, as she hit the ground again. The entire mall went silent. Maya looked up through tears at Derek, standing over her, his face flushed with rage and entitlement. And she saw the moment Hiro's phone call connected, saw Kenji's expression shift from protective to absolutely terrified, not for himself, for what was coming. Her phone was ringing, Takeshi's name on the screen. Her hands shook as she answered. "Maya," his voice was eerily calm, too calm. "Are you hurt?" "I'm okay, just a scratch." "Don't lie to me. Are you hurt?" "My lip is bleeding. I fell, but I'm fine, really." "Who touched you?" She closed her eyes, the secret she'd been holding pressed against her ribs like a physical weight. "My ex-fiancé, Derek, but it's fine. Security has him." Silence. Then, in a voice carved from ice, "Put Hiro on the phone." She handed the phone over with trembling hands, watched Hiro's face go pale as he listened to whatever Takeshi was saying. He responded in rapid Japanese, too fast for her to
follow completely, but she caught enough. "Yes, sir. Injured. Bleeding. The ex-fiancé. Physical assault. Security footage. Yes, sir. We'll hold him." He handed the phone back. "Baby," she started. "I'm 8 minutes away." His voice promised violence. "Don't let him leave. If mall security tries to release him, tell them who you are. Use my name." "Takeshi, please don't do anything." "He put his hands on you. He made you bleed. There is no universe in which that man walks away without understanding his mistake." The line went dead. Maya looked at Kenji, who had Derek face down on the marble now, his arm twisted behind his back. At Hiro, who'd positioned himself between her and everyone else. At the crowd of shoppers with their phones out, recording, whispering. At Derek's girlfriend screaming about lawsuits and assault. And she felt cold certainty settle in her chest. Derek had no idea what he'd just done. No idea who she was now. No idea about the child she carried, or the man who'd claimed her as his own. Mall security arrived, trying to sort through the chaos. They separated everyone, took her to a private office, had a medic clean her split lip, the scrape on her elbow. Kenji stood guard at the door, his expression grim. "Ma'am," he said quietly in Japanese, "Yamamoto-san is going to be very angry." "I know. Not at you, never at you, but what he does when he arrives." Kenji trailed off. "Perhaps you should not watch." But she couldn't leave, wouldn't leave. This was her past colliding with her present, and she needed to see it through. Through the office window, she could see Derek in another room, pacing, gesturing, his girlfriend beside him. He had annoyed, inconvenienced. He had no idea. Then, Takeshi arrived. She felt his presence before she saw him. The mall security supervisor's radio crackled, his face went white, and suddenly everyone was standing straighter, moving faster. The door opened. Takeshi walked in, still in his business suit, but there was nothing civilized about him now. 6 of his men followed, all armed, all wearing the same lethal expression. He crossed to her in 3 strides, his hands cupping her face with devastating gentleness. His eyes traveled over her split lip, the bandage on her elbow, and when he looked at her again, she saw murder. "Tell me exactly what happened," he said in Japanese, his voice barely above a whisper. She told him everything. Seattle, the abandonment, the first pregnancy, the miscarriage, finding Derek today, the kick, the shove. Takeshi's hands trembled against her face. "You were pregnant before?" "Yes." "You lost a child because of him?" "Yes." Something shifted in his expression, something dark and absolute. "Where is he?" "Takeshi, what are you going to do?" He switched to English, his accent thick but clear. "I am going to make sure he never touches you again, that he never even thinks your name without fear." "He's not worth it." "You are worth everything." He pulled back, his eyes searching hers. "Why didn't you tell me about him, about what he did to you?" "Because I wanted to forget, because I thought I had moved on, because you gave me a new life, and I didn't want the old one to touch it." His jaw clenched. "Show me which room." Maya stood, her hand instinctively going to her stomach. The movement was unconscious, protective, and Takeshi saw it. His eyes dropped to where her hand rested, then back to her face. She watched comprehension start to dawn. "Maya." "Later," she whispered. "Please, let's deal with this first, then we'll talk." He stared at her for a long moment, then nodded once. "Stay here. This won't take long." He walked out, his men following. Maya moved to the window despite Kenji's protest. She had to see, had to witness Derek finally understanding what he'd lost, what he'd destroyed, what he'd just threatened. Takeshi entered the room where Derek waited. Derek looked up, annoyed, then dismissive. "About time. I want to file charges against that crazy woman and her thugs." Takeshi didn't respond, just looked at him with those dark, cold eyes. "Who are you?" Derek demanded. "Mall management? Because I'm going to sue this entire—" Takeshi moved. One moment he was standing still. The next, Derek was lifted off his feet by his throat, slammed against the wall hard enough to crack the plaster. His girlfriend screamed. Security guards stepped back. "My name," Takeshi said in perfect English, his voice deadly calm, "is Takeshi Yamamoto. The woman you just assaulted is my wife. Do you understand what that means?" He dropped Derek, who collapsed, gasping. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know she was married." "You think I care about a legal document?" Takeshi's smile was terrifying. "I'm angry because you destroyed her years before I found her, because you left her pregnant and homeless, because you caused her to lose a child, because today you put your hands on her in violence." Derek's face went white. "She told you that? She's lying. She's crazy. She probably—" Takeshi kicked him in the ribs, hard. The sound of bone cracking echoed through the room. "Let me educate you on how my world works," Takeshi said, crouching beside Derek's writhing form. "I control this city in ways you cannot comprehend. I own businesses, politicians, police. I have men who would die for me without question. And that woman you kicked, she's the only thing in this world I value more than my own life." He grabbed Derek's hair, forcing his head up. "So when you pushed her, when you made her bleed, when you threatened the mother of my child, you signed your own fate. Do you understand?" Maya's hand went to her stomach again. He knew. Somehow he knew. "Please," Derek whimpered. "I'm sorry. I'll apologize. I'll do anything." "Your apology means nothing," Takeshi released him with disgust. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to issue a public apology to my wife for what you did to her in Seattle and what you did today. You're going to pay full restitution for everything you stole from her. And you're going to leave Tokyo within 24 hours and never return. If you come within 1,000 miles of my wife again, I will consider it an act of war." "And if I refuse?" Then I'll have you arrested for assault. I have security footage, witnesses, and excellent lawyers. You will spend the next 5 years in a Japanese prison, and I promise you, my reach extends behind those walls." Derek's face went white. "You can't do this."
"I can do anything I want. This is my city." Takeshi stood, straightening his suit jacket. "You have until midnight to leave. My men will escort you to the airport. If you miss that flight, I cannot guarantee your safety." He walked out without looking back, leaving Derek broken on the floor. When Takeshi returned to the office, Maya was standing by the window, her arms wrapped around herself. He closed the door, dismissed everyone else, and they were alone. "How long?" he asked, quietly in Japanese. 3 months. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I was scared. The first time I lost the baby because of stress and poverty and trauma. I wanted to make sure this one was safe before I told you, before I let myself believe it was real." He crossed to her, his hands gentle on her face again. "You thought I would be anything but happy?" "I thought you might be worried. Your world is dangerous. Bringing a child into it is the greatest gift you could give me." His voice broke. "Maya, I love you. I want this baby. I want everything with you." She started crying then, all the fear and relief and emotion flooding out. "I was going to tell you tonight. I had this whole plan. I was going to give you a gift at dinner, and inside would be the ultrasound picture and—" He kissed her, deep and thorough and full of promise. "We'll still do that. We'll still have that moment. But first, I need you to see a doctor. Make sure you're okay. Make sure the baby is okay." "The baby is fine. I'm fine." "Humor me." He pulled out his phone, made a call, spoke rapid Japanese. "My personal physician will meet us at home in an hour. Until then, we're leaving this place." He picked her up carefully, carrying her out of the office. His men formed a protective circle, and Maya let herself rest against his chest, feeling safe for the first time since seeing Derek. As they left the mall, she saw police arriving, saw Derek being loaded into an ambulance, his girlfriend hysterical, saw cameras and reporters and chaos, but none of it touched her. Takeshi's arms were a fortress. In the car, heading back to Shibuya, Takeshi held her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "Tell me about the first pregnancy," he said softly. "Tell me everything."
So she did. The whole story. How Derek had pretended to be happy when she told him. How he'd stayed just long enough for her to buy baby things, to paint a nursery, to believe they'd be a family. How she'd come home from work one day to find everything valuable gone, her bank account emptied, and a note saying he couldn't be trapped by a desperate woman. "I lost my apartment, lost my jobs. I lived in my car for 3 weeks. I tried to eat, tried to stay healthy, but I had nothing. No money, no family, no help. And then one morning there was blood everywhere, and I knew." Takeshi's grip on her hand tightened. "Did you go to a hospital?" "A charity clinic. They confirmed what I already knew. I'd lost the baby from stress and malnutrition. They gave me information about social services, but I couldn't process it. I just wanted to disappear." "But you didn't." "No, I got angry instead. I spent a year rebuilding, working 3 jobs, saving every penny. I applied for teaching positions overseas because I wanted to escape everything that reminded me of that life. And Tokyo offered me a position, so I came here. I was supposed to teach English at an international school. And then you met me. And then I met you at that awful networking conference where I didn't know anyone and felt completely out of place, and you walked up to me and asked in terrible English if I was as bored as you were." He smiled. "My English is much better now. Because I've been teaching you." She squeezed his hand. "You saved me, Takeshi. You gave me a life I never dreamed possible.
You saved yourself, he said seriously. You survived. You rebuilt. You came to a foreign country alone and started over. I just recognized what everyone else was too blind to see. You're the strongest person I've ever met. At their penthouse, Dr. Sato was waiting. She was kind and efficient, checking Maya thoroughly, doing an ultrasound right there in their bedroom. Everything looks perfect, Dr. Sato said in English for Maya's benefit. The baby is healthy, strong heartbeat. You're measuring right at 12 weeks. The fall didn't cause any damage, but you'll be sore for a few days. Takeshi's relief was visible. He thanked Dr. Sato profusely, then turned to the ultrasound screen. That's our baby? That's our baby. He stared at the tiny form on the screen, and Maya watched emotions play across his face. Wonder, fear, joy, love. When he looked at her again, his eyes were wet. I'm going to be a father. You're going to be a father. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips, gentle kisses full of reverence. I will protect you both with everything I am. You will never be vulnerable again, never be hungry or scared or alone. I promise you. I know. She believed him. Absolutely.
That night, after Dr. Sato left, they lay in bed, Takeshi's hand on her stomach, feeling for movement that wouldn't come for weeks yet. Maya told him about her fears, her hopes, her dreams for their child, and he told her about his own childhood, the violence he'd grown up with, the empire his father had built and the one he'd expanded. I want our child to have better, he said quietly. I want them to grow up safe, loved, free to choose their own path. They will, because they'll have you as a father. 2 days later, Derek's public apology went viral. He stood in front of cameras, looking haggard and defeated, and confessed everything. The theft, the abandonment, the assault in Tokyo. He apologized to Maya specifically and announced he was leaving Japan permanently and entering therapy. The internet responded with predictable fury. Derek Hamilton became a cautionary tale. His reputation was destroyed. And Maya felt nothing. No satisfaction, no vindication. Just relief that the chapter was finally closed. She deleted the video after watching it once, blocked Derek on every platform, and focused on her future. On Christmas morning, Takeshi gave her a velvet box. Inside was a necklace with a pendant shaped like a cherry blossom. For new beginnings, he said, fastening it around her neck, for the family we're building. She gave him her gift then, a small box wrapped in silver paper. Inside was the ultrasound picture and a note in Japanese she'd painstakingly written, "You're going to be a father." He cried. This dangerous man who controlled Tokyo's underground empire cried while holding a grainy black and white photo of their child. I love you, both of you, my family, my everything. 6 months later, Maya gave birth to a daughter. They named her Sakura. She had Takeshi's dark eyes and Maya's smile, and from the moment she entered the world, she was loved beyond measure. Derek never returned to Tokyo. Maya heard through mutual friends that he'd moved to Australia, started over with a new name. She didn't care. That life was gone. She had everything that mattered, here. On their daughter's first birthday, Maya stood in their Shibuya penthouse, watching Takeshi hold Sakura, singing to her in Japanese. And she thought about the journey that brought her here. The pain, the loss, the slow rebuilding, the unexpected love that changed everything. Derek had tried to destroy her, had kicked her when she was carrying new life, but she survived. She rose, and now she stood in a home filled with love, holding a future she'd built from the ruins of her past. Takeshi looked up, caught her watching, and smiled. What are you thinking about? How far we've come. How lucky I am. I'm the lucky one. He kissed Sakura's head, then crossed to Maya, pulling her into their embrace. You gave me everything. A home, a family, a reason to be better than what I was. We gave each other everything. And as they stood there, the three of them wrapped in evening light filtering through Tokyo windows,
Maya knew that some stories that begin in pain end in perfect, unexpected joy. Derek was her past, but Takeshi and Sakura were her future, and it was more beautiful than anything she'd ever dared to dream.